Hello and welcome to Get to Know Science. This video is a continuation of the aerobic and anaerobic respiration. It's part 2 and it's about exercise and oxygen debt. So let's look again at the equation for aerobic respiration. So we have glucose plus oxygen gives us carbon dioxide plus water, and in brackets it gives us energy. We put it in brackets because energy is not part of the chemical equation, but it is produced as a result of this exothermic reaction. So I'm just going to put it in brackets here so that we remember that energy is being made. In the context of exercise, we're going to look at what happens in the body when our muscles contract during exercise. So this is a muscle here, and it's made of muscle fibers, which are made of muscle cells. So here's just a diagram of muscle fibers, and each fiber is made up of muscle cells, and respiration will occur in the mitochondria of each muscle cell. The muscle cells store glucose in the form of glycogen, and glycogen is then rapidly converted into glucose for use in respiration, but it's stored in the muscles as something called glycogen. And our cells respire all day long, whether they're muscle cells or not. But when we exercise, our muscles contract harder and faster than normal, and they require more energy. So when we exercise, our muscles are contracting faster and they're contracting harder, and they require more energy to do so. Therefore, they need to be supplied with more glucose and more oxygen, and then also the carbon dioxide needs to be taken away quickly as well. So in order to facilitate this, a couple of changes need to occur in order to supply these things to the muscle cells. So first of all, the heart rate increases. This increases the blood flow to the muscle, and it provides more glucose and more oxygen, and it removes more carbon dioxide at a faster rate. And not only does the heart rate increase, but also the blood vessels to that particular muscle will dilate or get wider in order to allow more blood flow to the muscle. The second thing is your breathing rate and breath volume will increase. So you breathe more often, that's the breathing rate, you breathe more often, and also you bring in more air into your lungs with each breath. So that's the breath volume increase. So each breath will bring more air into your lungs. So the increased supply of oxygen can be taken to the muscle by the blood, and also more carbon dioxide can be breathed out as well. If you're exercising hard, your body sometimes may not be able to supply oxygen to the muscles fast enough. And when this happens, your muscle cells have to respire anaerobically. So if we have a look at the equation for anaerobic respiration, remember this was in the previous video, part 1. I'll put energy in brackets again. So glucose goes straight to lactic acid and energy in the absence of enough oxygen. And the buildup of lactic acid will make your muscles fatigue, which means they cannot contract efficiently. So it's important that our body is able to clear the lactic acid from our muscles, and it does this by reacting it with oxygen after the exercise is over. The amount of oxygen needed to break down the lactic acid is known as the oxygen debt. So after exercise, you continue to have a high heart rate and breathing rate in order to supply the extra oxygen needed to pay off the oxygen debt. So the lactic acid is reacted with oxygen, which then becomes carbon dioxide and water, and the carbon dioxide and water is then breathed out. And the oxygen debt is the amount of oxygen needed in order to break down all of the lactic acid that has built up in the muscles during exercise. So let's try a quick question. In this table, we have 4 groups of athletes, and their average maximum rate of oxygen consumption is given here. So group A has a maximum rate of oxygen consumption on average of 78.6 centimeters cubed per kg per minute. And their best time in a 10-mile race is 48.9 minutes. And you can see for the other groups, their data is there. So the first question is, what is the relationship between the maximum rate of oxygen consumption and time for a 10-mile race? So they want the relationship between the maximum rate of oxygen consumption and time taken for a 10-mile race. Well, we can see from the table that Group A has the highest maximum rate of oxygen consumption, and Group B has slightly less, Group C has less, and Group D has even less. So the trend here in the table is going from Group A to D down the table. The maximum rate of oxygen consumption is decreasing, and while it's decreasing down the table here, the best time in 10-mile race is increasing, which means that Group D is slower than Group C, which is slower than Group B, which is slower than Group A. So we see that the group with the maximum rate of oxygen consumption has the best time, has the shortest time for that 10-mile race. And this trend is shown in the table. So decreasing the maximum rate of oxygen consumption increases your time in that race. So the relationship is, as the maximum rate of oxygen consumption decreases, best time in a 10-mile race increases. So just an explanation for this relationship. Well, what do we know about oxygen consumption as it's related to exercise? Well, we know that oxygen is needed for aerobic respiration to take place. And we know that the more oxygen we supply to a muscle, the more energy it can produce. And therefore, you'll have a better time in the 10-mile race. So the more oxygen you can consume, the more energy your muscles can produce, and therefore the better your time will be. Okay, so an increase in the rate of oxygen consumption will lead to more energy for running, which will lead to a faster time. And we know that using our knowledge of respiration. We know that oxygen is definitely needed for respiration. When we're exercising, we know that we need more oxygen in order to produce more energy in order to do that exercise. And the more oxygen you can produce, the more energy you can produce, and therefore the faster your run will be. Okay, so that was just a quick video on exercise and oxygen debt. That was part 2 of our respiration videos. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment, and thank you for watching.